Everybody, this is Perch. There's the boy who cried wolf phenomenon that goes on where you shout about something, and if eventually with every time you shout, people pay a little bit less attention each time because when you're trying to bring up a topic, I always feel like there's kind of two ways to do it. You can try and lay out your case calmly with a lot of facts, a lot of data, offer some solutions, and that takes a lot more work. You have to invest a lot of your time into making sure your facts are right, coming up with some ideas of remedy or how things can get better, and it's a lot of steps to basically put together a good case. However, it's healthier to do that. The change typically comes more from well thought out cases, and but it does require a level of smarts and investment of time and work to do that. And the other route is to just scream as loud as you can and say really alarming things that get people's attention, comments that make it sound like the world is about to blow up, and if people don't give you their attention right now, right away, that everything's going to be destroyed, and it's just you have to listen right now, right this very minute. Um, Unfortunately, I think social media definitely lends itself to the second path. I think that in many cases, I would watch a bunch of people 2, 3 years ago really get insulting when somebody tried to lay out a case. I remember people would like do a tweet thread where it's like, hey, here's some data around something or other, and they'd like do a 22-part tweet thread. And on the surface, you might say, 22 tweets, that sounds nightmarish, except with really complex topics, yeah, you need a bunch of space. You need to actually lay out a bunch of information. And it's easy to kind of joke like, oh, look at this boring person boring us with all their facts. But, some some topics need data. You actually need to, lay out facts. It's doing something in, 200 characters or so is not a well nuanced, thought through position. However, as we saw, it's way easier to just push off of emotion and scream about something, and it's better. You don't have to lay out facts. In that kind of context, you can just say, everybody is terrible. And if somebody comes, is like, well, in what way exactly? You can say, oh, here comes somebody wanting me to prove what I have to say, and it just creates this entire way of arguing where nobody has to actually provide any facts or data or backup for what they're saying. They just get to scream and shout. And of course, that's more popular. It takes a lot less work, and it's easier. You don't have to be nearly as smart to do this, and this has been adopted. And we've seen this in our politics. We see it with everything. It always makes me laugh. There are definitely environmental issues to talk about where our world is concerned and everything else. There's some big things we have to think about, discuss, and work out solutions for. Those solutions are not coming from Twitter. They cannot. And the pushback of sometimes you just have to get people's attention in order to get them into action, that sounds good. But if you just get their attention based on emotion and you don't give them any, well thought through plan, then people just run around screaming and shouting, and they don't actually do anything. It's why when the whole COVID situation hit and people are like screaming at each other on Twitter, like, you have to wear a mask or you're going to kill grandma. It's like, then you'd see, various news reports through the summer. You'd see whether they're protests, where you see people just enjoying themselves at the beach, whatever it is. It's like, hey, nobody's wearing a mask. Why? Because they didn't get any of the information about why it's a good idea. They just yelled about it on Twitter or Facebook or wherever it happens to be. They screamed about this topic, and they didn't provide any context for what you're supposed to do. And so nobody wore a mask. This is the big fallacy about all this, is the people who are in theory pro-mask or anti-mask, nobody was actually following the guidelines that they were screaming about, because nobody really believed in it. They just believed in, dunking on other people. That's all it was. And so you take this to comics, and you see a similar thing going on. The comics dialogue is regressed into, by and large, just shame tweets being lobbed at each other. The discussion over NFTs is absolutely absurd. People are saying the most insane, dumb things over this technology, over this piece. Now, for the record, I don't like NFTs. I don't plan to buy them. I don't see value in them. That's my personal position. If you want to buy them, you think that's a good place for your money to go, I more power to you. I don't want to stop you. I'm not going to stop you, and you're welcome to it. It's not for me. I'm it's the classic case of not for me. I have no interest in it. I am a techie, but as everybody knows, I have a house littered with garbage. That tech nonsense. My wife is driven insane by the amount of dumb tech gadgets I bought. I have no interest in this one. However, I also do like to be honest about it. And some of these tweets, like a single NFT uses the amount of power that the city of Chicago does in a month. Like, listen, are you listening to yourselves? That is not true. That is factually not true. And the articles that a lot of people are citing around energy consumption with NFTs are being extremely loose with the facts, and they're taking a extreme, like the most exaggerated position possible over the depth and the reach of the technology, and they're assigning, in many cases, worst case scenario energy consumption. And on top of that, technology always optimizes. Always. This isn't like most of the time. 100% of the time, it optimizes. It optimizes in one of two ways. It either gets more efficient, smaller, simpler, cheaper to produce, easier, or it dies. There's lots of technology. It can never bridge that hurdle, can never get an audience, and it goes away. And that one of two things is going to happen here. I believe that a lot of the pushback, bluntly, on NFTs and blockchain and all of that has to do with the fact that Elon Musk is not a liberal. Just bluntly, I think that's where a lot of it has to go. He's rich, so he's an evil bad guy for whatever reason. Nobody really wants to attack the Amazon guy. People are too hooked and dependent on Amazon services. So Jeff Bezos largely escapes all the criticism, despite the fact that he is a rich bastard. And by all accounts, from his ex-wife to people who worked for him, is a complete asshole. But whatever. Elon Musk has been more out there with talking about frustrations with a lot of liberal policies, and so he is a bad guy. And that's to me where I think a lot of this is coming from. A lot of people in comics are shouting about this stuff, and they really don't have any of the facts. They have maybe read one article, they have seen some tweets from other people talking about energy consumption. They have no idea about the actual data on it, nor do they want to learn. They just want to yell about it. And in many cases, they want to yell about it because they don't know how to do it. And so other comic creators that are smart enough, clever enough to know how to do it are bad. It is a classic case of this person is getting rich doing something I don't know how to do, therefore I am going to attack it. And so they do. And that's really what a lot of this feels like. What I find wonderful about this process is that the comic artists who are making NFTs have largely taken a position of complete ignoring all of the hysteria and the yelling. And I find this fascinating because the people who yell and scream and write very nasty stuff, and the comments, by the way, around NFTs and who's using them and everything else have evolved way beyond, I don't think this is a very good idea, to you are personally responsible for genocide. Like, this was a tweet that an actual creator put out there that is the most ludicrous, over the top screaming about this. And it's like, Matt Knitt, the writer of Berserker, is responsible for genocide, came out of the mouths of another comic creator on Kickstarter. Yikes! Like that's absolutely not productive. It's just it's foolish and ignorant. But I am loving the fact that the people who are proceeding with this technology, rather than get into brawling, rather than issue an apology, rather than saying things like, you know what, I'm carefully analyzing what to do and taking, they're not engaging at all. They're completely ignoring. And I've heard that a couple of these creators have blocked their fellow creators who are screaming about this. And it's fun to watch the meltdown, bluntly. I mean, we're seeing people who are used to being paid attention to when they scream and shout. They're used to people immediately jumping up and taking notice and issuing apologies and making sure that they, and we're seeing, and I think it's indicative of the fact the comic industry is changing and the money is moving to other places. People are like, I'm not going to play this game anymore. I need to feed myself. I need to make money. And if, being in this go nowhere war against some fool who doesn't know what they're talking about on Twitter of all places, this does not help my pocketbook. I have had a number of creators reach out in mail, talking about how it's like, hey, I'm a left wing person. I agree with a lot of Democrat policies, but I need to, I need to make money. I'm not trying to become a billionaire. I'm not trying to become grossly wealthy. I want to make sure that I continue to put food on the table, and I want to make sure that I can continue to do comics. I do not have a rich relative who's propping me up, and so I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and I'm going to just tune out these other people. And I say, great. That is a healthy solution to this current situation. Very similar to Boom's current stance on all the people who every single day find new reasons to scream about the fact they did this thing on Kickstarter, including, I mean, the Joe Glass who had his Kickstarter funded. He found some people at literally the 11th hour to throw thousands of dollars into his Kickstarter to make sure it was successful. Continues to want to beat the drum about how Boom was wrong. They shouldn't have used the platform. It wasn't for them. They're a big corporation. They shouldn't get to do it. And on it goes. And Boom's response is like, yeah, I'm just going to ignore it. You scream into the void. And I think that's healthy. I'll throw this out there that I think will irk some people, because I know some of you are in this position. So a couple years ago, when a lot of comic fans were getting really, really salty about things and screaming and shouting, and creators basically blocked them, said, "You can, I'm not going to take this. You're going to scream into the void. I don't want to hear it." It was their right to do that. We've talked before that I don't, I think that being too aggressive with the blocking is self-destructive to your career, but it's your choice. But it's really the same thing that's playing out now. The difference is creators are just blocking each other. I know I know there's a list out there. I've got the list of a basically a blockchain against a number of comic creators who are seen as troublemakers, and I know a decent amount of creators are starting to use it. I'm just saying, none of this seems healthy to me, that aspect of it, but the ignoring the hysteria seems like the absolute right thing to do. It's feeding into this too much is teaching everybody terrible lessons. So anyway, it's a wild world that we're watching happening go on here. But the sad part to me is just how the dialogue has just devolved. That we're very, it's a there's no it's a trouble. Like I said at the beginning, the trouble was when people started really mocking people who were coming with a lot of data and a lot of facts. It's like, hey, here's a well thought out argument. It's like, hey, nerd. Like that was a little signal to all of us that things were going to go bad, and so here we are. So maybe we're coming into it, and that's a good thing. Anyway, what do you think about all this? Let me know in your comments below. Like and subscribe, and hey, thanks for listening.